Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. It is the Monday Motivation Podcast with Keegan Jewell, where we are reaching our full potential one Monday at a time. This morning, we have an interview with AJ Garcia, formerly known as Ajax the Rapper. With that, we will get a little preview of his old music here coming up in a couple seconds. But don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Reach out if it impacts you. Let us know how it's doing at Monday Motivation Podcast on Instagram or at the Hope Project Reel. Again, let's get into this episode of the Monday Motivation Podcast with Keegan Jewell, where again, we are reaching our full potential one Monday at a time.
Have you ever driven in a car with all your friends? You be cruising, roll the windows down and let the air get in. Breeze be blowing through your hair, feeling just like it's.
And it doesn't sound like it's there right now, so I don't know. I don't know what was going on there. I'll keep it up and see what it goes, but alright, I'll just go into this again. So here, everyone, with my guy AJ Garcia. AJ lives in Michigan. He is someone that I've actually never met in person. He's someone that we connected through social media, through Twitter, Instagram, and started messaging back and forth, and now have really grown kind of this social media relationship. And first saw AJ. He used to do music, used to do that sort of stuff, and his name was Ajax the Rapper. I don't know where that came from, but Ajax the Rapper was that name. But now he's no longer doing music and doing a little bit other stuff. We'll talk a little bit about that later on in this interview. But now he is the director of social media and a part of the preaching rotation at Westside Community Church up there in Michigan. Remind me again, AJ, where is it in Michigan that you live?
Yeah, it's in Traverse City, Michigan, so northern Michigan. So like the classic hand map, it would be the pinky area.
That's right. And so yeah, that's AJ. Quick kind of rundown of who he is. And today we're going to talk on a topic that as we were preparing for this interview, we were talking back and forth, and AJ really had a heart for this. And the topic today is humility. Just kind of learning on how to walk in humility, how to learn humility, and how to embrace just the whole thing of humility. So like I said, AJ, you used to do music stuff, and now you no longer do it. When you switched, I know we've talked a little bit about this, your heart behind going from music to ministry, as well as just more of a creative side in general. When it came to the humility part of that, what was the toughest part for you in that transition?
Well, I mean, right off the bat, like I was a rapper, so rap culture is just notorious for being like egocentric. It's just like a stereotype of rappers is just all about themselves. And so, going in to like as a 16-year-old wanting to start rapping, and as like a solo artist trying to like build himself up, it was like so easy for me to just be all about myself.
Yeah.
And like putting like the Christian brand on it, like that didn't take anything away from wanting to have like an actual like successful, to be an actually like a successful artist. And so I was, pushing myself out there. And for the 3 years that I did it, I was aware the entire time of how like egocentric and like self-focused, and like my self-image, like how aware I was of that throughout the entirety of it. So I got to this point where I was like, the most important thing about making music is to preach the gospel, is to give people hope, is to love people and show them that they're, valued. And in rap, I felt like doing music, it became like I was battling with the thing that I wanted to do, being a rapper. And so I decided, you know what, I'm just going to take the music side out of it and just go from rapper to preacher, and
That's good.
dive from music to ministry, and make that transition. For me personally, it felt like it started to take away distractions for me. And I realized, you know what, like I can keep trying to push through it and keep trying to, do what I think I should be doing, or I could just make the leap and say, hey, I'm gonna stop rapping. It's not worth it for me anymore.
Yeah, that's really good. Dang, man. Like I said, that I know as I've talked to you, that was a tough decision in the time for you to do. Because yeah, man. But I love that, like you said, it's not that what you were giving up was bad,
right?
But you said, you had to realize your heart in it and how it just eliminated those distractions. I really like that. So like we said, your current role is the director of social media, as well as getting to be on the preaching rotation at Westside Community Church, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Would you mind explaining for everyone briefly kind of what your role looks like, but also within that, like as you stepped into this new role, how did you learn humility as you stepped into this new role for yourself?
Right. So like what I do basically it's kind of like three different sections, like three different branches. One of them is social media. The other one is preaching and kind of like more pastoral roles. And then the third one would be youth. And so the youth encompasses both the preaching and pastoral and also the social media. So those are kind of like the three main things that I do. And so my week, like the week in, week out, like my schedule revolves around those three. And so for social media, as a whole, I'm like the photographer, filmmaker, graphic designer. We have a graphic designer, but as far as like the social media stuff, her and I work we work in relationship with making graphics for the church as a whole. And so I kind of have my hand in a little bit of all of that, and then managing our social medias like our Facebook and Instagram, and then kind of just digital media like websites and the app, etc.
That's good.
And then as far as like the preaching, it's kind of being backup preacher, or for when, just in case somebody gets sick or isn't able to make it, or there's an emergency. But then also having I think I'm in this season of like once a quarter I've been it's kind of like a trend, like every few months I've been able to preach, and so having those opportunities to like the adult congregation is just so much different than preaching at youth. And then with youth, I'm just a youth leader preaching, and just being goofy, doing what youth leaders do.
That's what youth's all about, right? Just being goofy.
Yep, for the youth, man. Make a fool of myself. I don't care.
Hey, exactly. Show them what it's like. Yeah, and definitely agree. Preaching to adult congregation is a lot different than speaking to youth, for sure. And so
young adults too. Like a few months back, I tried to make a joke about like Tinder.
Oh no!
And it was their like 9 a.m. first service. Like all of our like young adults and like 20 somethings, 30 somethings, like they come to the 11 o'clock service. Like that's the sleep in. Like I'm, 9 o'clock is like they're beating Jesus to church. Like they're trying to get there early, and so it's just great here everywhere. I love like the wisdom, but I tried to drop I think it was like one of my first times preaching.
Oh no!
And so I tried to drop like a Tinder joke, like basically like sliding in their DMs or, swipe right on Tinder, something along those lines. And it just flopped. And I was like trying to save myself from that. And so there's a difference. There's a difference in the jokes that you can get away with.
Very much so. So yeah, that's what you do. I love, like I said, I've told you this before, I think, but I love getting to see just the content you guys put out and post. It's really great stuff. But even within that, like stepping into that role, I know when we talked last time, you really said that it was definitely God opening doors and stepping you into that role, but it was definitely one where you went from intern to just this position you're in now. So when you stepped into that role, what was your biggest learning takeaway when it came to learning humility within that role?
Yeah. I stepped into, so I was at Bible college when they offered me the internship, the summer internship. And so I was like, dude, heck yeah. So I jumped into it. I thought it was super cool. I was really excited, and doing predominantly social media stuff. We're big on camps during the summer for our children's and youth. And so I was really involved with that. And I just fell in love with the church. The church, liked me. So we kind of agreed on yep, I'll stay. And they were like, sweet, we're glad to have you. So I stayed, I was on staff. And so I think I was 19 at the time when I came up here. As a 19-year-old who, people kept telling me my entire childhood and teenage life, all the potential you have. It finally seeing it all come true. It was very easy for me to get prideful about being where I was at. Seeing all of my friends and colleagues not having the opportunities that I was having, it began to brew this pride and this arrogance, if you will, that looking back at it, I can call it out for what it was. But at the time, I think I still was trying to be genuine, but it had its ways of creeping in certain moments. And so being this younger, I know what I'm doing. Man, young AJ was stupid. And so I thought I knew what I was doing. I know what just let me do what I do kind of stuff. And I had to learn really quickly, working on a team is so much better, beneficial, easier than trying to do it all by yourself. And so through that, I think I learned humility because God was humbling me from my pride. And so I began to recognize man, I don't like the way I feel when my boss tells me to change something. I don't like how I get defensive so quickly. I began to recognize those things in myself of, wow, that's pride. You think you are the guy. And so I began to study humility. I began to read Philippians 2. I began to read James 4, these passages where God is so clearly trying to express humility and how important it is for that. And so, I think God revealed to me that I was being prideful and showed me how important humility was, to just learn from others and admit when you're wrong and grow from that.
That's good. I really like that. Yeah, that's definitely, like you said, working on a team is so much different than just doing it yourself. Mm-hmm. And so, I love that you said, though, because this leads, I feel greatly into this next question we've got, is you said that you really took time to study humility, looking into scripture and reading books and stuff on it. So as you've done that and you've seen humility played out in the workplace and talked to people about humility. What, in your opinion, what would you say is the biggest misconception of humility that people have?
Oh, dude, that it's a weakness. That humility is a weakness. And I see time and time again, people think like, whether they're explicit about it or not, like sometimes it's even in like the subconscious, like the way that they approach humility, they don't want to be perceived as weak. And that's, I think something that, that men struggle with, not being perceived as weak or as not being strong. And I think that women often want to express that they don't have it all together. And so there's weaknesses in both camps. Those are just trends that I've seen. I'm sure it's different, and I'm no expert at all. But that's just kind of what I've seen. I think that humility, the reality of it is it's not a weakness. Like, I'm gonna start preaching, bro. Like,
do it, bring it.
Were David's, like the mighty men, like David's army, were they weak when they submitted to David's command? Like, is any soldier weak because they submit to authority? Of course not. Like, David wasn't weak when he submitted to Saul, even though he knew he was about to be the next king. He still submitted. Was Jesus weak when he submitted to the Father?
Come on.
Like Jesus was God, and he was obviously strong, but he still submitted and humbled himself to the Father. And so, like, yeah, Philippians 2, it talks about how I'm trying to find it right now.
2:8, isn't it?
Being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God has highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus, every knee shall bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth. And so I've learned that humility is not a weakness. It's actually, in my opinion, one of the greatest evidences of maturity and strength in a Christian. And so, yeah, I would argue that humility is a strength and should be pursued by every leader, that every person who wants to step into leadership. Humility is mad important.
Dude, yeah, I love that. I also love that. I love that passage you brought up. I think it was my freshman year of college.
Mm-hmm.
We had a preaching class, and we had to do a topical sermon, and I chose humility, and I definitely used that passage.
Yeah.
Because, I think it's so true with everything. And I also love that you brought up David and Saul, because that, I think, is just a huge one that is so true. Like you said, like, I think of the story when David has Saul in the cave, could have easily killed him.
Right.
And, like, everyone's just like, you're supposed to be king. This is your moment. And David, not only did he just, like, cut off a piece of his robe, but then goes and, like, asks God for forgiveness and goes and, like, repents from it. I was like,
right,
the humility there of, I'm going to be king. I'm supposed to be king. But that man's in charge right now, and I need to submit to his rule and his leadership.
I'm reading this book right now called How to Lead When You're Not in Charge.
Dude, I've heard so much about that and seen it so much. I need to get it.
So good. And in it, there's this, I'm trying to find the first name. Clay Scroggins is the author. And in it, he talks about how if you're not in leadership, and I think he's speaking mainly to young leaders, but I mean, anyone, it speaks to anyone. If you're not in leadership or the leadership that you think you should be in, it's because God does not want you in that position yet. And so,
that's good.
Man, it's humbling for me because I am I want so badly to just do what I want to do. Like let me preach. I think I would do really good at it. Or let me lead this team. I think I would be really good at it. And I've had to realize that no, like, you are not ready for that, whether you think you are or not. God will put you in the position when you're ready. Humility precedes exaltation all the time. Every time that God talks about exalting somebody, right before that, it's God humbling someone. So, like, in Philippians 2, like, it's in verse 9, therefore God has highly exalted him. Jesus was humbled, God exalted him. God exalts the humble, the meek inherit the earth. It's the first shall be or the last shall be first. Like, time and time again, we see that humility precedes exaltation. So God will lift up those who are not afraid to put their head down and their hands up and say, God, like, just use me. Like, this isn't my stage. Like, I'm just a tool for you to use.
Oh man, this boy out here preaching right now. That's good. I really like that, man. Humility precedes exaltation. Man, that's simple. That's so true. I love that. Yeah, dude. Talked a lot about humility, kind of the biggest misconception, and I really do like what you say, that I'd agree. I think a lot of times we think humility is seen as a weakness. When it comes down to it, as you've seen humility played out, as you've worked on it and lived it out yourself, why would you, if someone was to say, AJ, why should I practice humility? Why is it worth it? Like, why would you say humility is worth it?
Well, I think humility is worth it because, I mean, what's the alternative? Like, the alternative's pride. The alternative is being somebody who is either always right, always has to be right, fights for their seat at the table, like, always wants to prove, that what they did was the best way to do. Like, what's the alternative to being humble? And, like, I look at, from both myself and, like, other people, like, I don't want to be led by somebody who's not humble. Like, I don't want to be told what to do from somebody who can't admit that they're ever wrong. So, like, in very practical ways, like for instance, as a friend, like, in friendships, like, imagine you're hanging out with a bunch of friends and you're all just, like, roasting each other, having a good time. You're driving somewhere, you're getting dinner, you're just going in. And on one of you start to, like, target one friend specifically, and then you realize, like, you step out and realize, like, man, it turned into everyone, like, just having fun laughing, to now this one friend is actually getting hurt. Like, it's actually hurting them. I want to be the friend, or I want to have the friend who is not afraid to step back and say, hey, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry that we were making fun of you. I'm sorry that this turned into being mean. I see that you're, like, sensitive, and I'm sorry for being insensitive. I was wrong. Do you forgive me? Like, that's such a humble attitude. Oh, yeah. In relationships, like, theoretically, if I had a fiance,
he has a fiance, people
arguing with my fiance of what show we could watch on Netflix, like,
this is all theoretical, right? Theoretically speaking,
who knows? And I want to watch the new season of The 100 because it flames, and I want to find out what happens. But she wants to watch Gossip Girl for the 500th time. Like, we can argue about it, but, like, I want to be the type of boyfriend, friend, fiance, husband who is able to say, hey, I can watch this anytime. Like, this is not honestly worth us fighting for. I want you to be happy. So, like, I'm going to not say, okay, fine, you're right, I'll just watch what you want to watch, but I'm actually going to say, okay, you're right. Like, if you want to watch it, we'll watch it. And when she say, no, you're just doing it because you want me to be, like, you want me to be right, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, actually, like, I actually care. Like, I really want you to watch it because that's what you want to watch. And, you know, it's not that big of a deal. And there's just like, you can think of example after example of how much better humility is than pride, than being always right, than proving others wrong, than taking hold of doing something right and showing everybody, hey, just, you know, I'm the one who actually came up with that idea. Or, hey, like, being in a group of people, like, and somebody recognizes, like, oh, that looks really cool. Like, humility is just stepping back and being like, that does look really cool, and walking away. Pride would be, oh, I'm the one who actually made that. Like, it was me. I'm the one who made that. And, like, wanting the recognition and the attention of it.
Yeah.
Man, like, so going back to the original question, I think that humility is worth it because the alternative is foolishness. The alternative is pride. The alternative is all about yourself, and that's not the call that Christians have.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that. And really, I mean, that last bit you were even saying, it reminds me of a quote, I believe it's by C.S. Lewis. Almost positive it is. I don't know why I always second guess myself on this, but it's on humility, and it says, humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And just like you said, it comes down to, instead of being the person in the room that does something and has to be known for it, and, oh, that looks good, oh yeah, that was totally me, that was all me, but instead being able and willing to have something be like, oh, that's super cool, and just stepping back, like you said, and appreciating it, not necessarily getting the recognition, not necessarily making it known that, oh, it was you. I like that. That's really good. So the last question I've got for you is, as you go from here, people are sitting here listening to this going, humility, you know, that's something I really feel like I need to work on. I just don't know where to start or how to begin to work on that. What advice would you give to someone about, you know, they're in the workplace, in the office, just out on the work site, wherever it is that they do it? What advice would you give someone on practicing humility and working on taking that next step of practicing humility in the workplace, in their daily life? Yeah.
I mean, first, like, I just want them to know, like, I want you to know, like, you are not alone. Everybody, every single person struggles with this inner conflict of others first or me first. Like, it's a battle that we all fight. But I think having the tools and having the desire to fight that and to say, no, I really want to pay attention to me right now. I really want to do what I want. I really want the credit. I really want the accolades. But that's not what I should want. That's not what is right. That's not what God's called me to. So if you're struggling with that, like, but you're like recognizing, like, man, I want to be humble. Like, you're already one step ahead of so many other people who are just ignorant to the fact that they're prideful. Like, no one knows that they're prideful. Well, no, they do. But a prideful person is so ignorant to the fact that they're prideful. And it takes God to reveal to them that they are that. And so for those of you who are sitting here like, man, I really need to send this to my friend. Like, he needs this. Like,
oh, snap.
Take a second, breathe, look in the mirror, check yourself, and then recognize, like, no, you need to listen to this. Like, you also need to benefit from this because we all do. So, I wrote down 5 things that I think would be beneficial. And if you don't remember any of them, that's fine. But if you remember one of them, like, that's also good. Like, I really like just short one-liners. And some of them aren't even like like beautifully written or exquisitely like composed. It's literally just what it is. So so like advice for practicing humility is, one, reminding yourself that you're not perfect. Is admitting that you don't need the credit. It's just because it's not your way doesn't mean it's the wrong way. It's remembering and actually seeing to knowing that other people have feelings too. And it's this fifth one that is my if you will, is being a lifelong learner. And this is the one that if I were to tell somebody like one short thing, like the fifth one would be it. Like, being a lifelong learner is so important to any Christian, first off, to any, even if you're non-Christian, if you just want to be a morally good person, first off, hit me up. We can talk about that. But even more than that, like, if that's your own like personal goal, like being a lifelong learner is so important. And then even more than that, even more than all of those, if you are a Christian leader, if you're wanting to pursue leadership in a church, in ministry, in whatever, being a lifelong learner is something that you need to hold on to, because if you don't, then you're going to be 50, 60-year-old pastor who hasn't changed anything since when you first became a Christian, and that is sad. So learn more. God isn't intimidated by questions, and you're not the smartest person in the room, and so learn. Ask the smartest person in the room the questions that you don't know, and be able to say, hey, how do you do that? Because you didn't know how to do that. You asked the question, you humbled yourself and asked the question. They answered it. Now you know how to do that. That's how you get wiser. Asking the question and being a lifelong learner.
Dang, man. That's real good. That's really good. And I agree. Be a lifelong learner. You're not always the smartest person in the room. That's really good stuff. Man, AJ, thank you again, dude. I'm glad this worked out. Glad we were able to get this interview. We'll definitely have to hop on and have some other conversations, whether it's for the podcast or just in general, man. I love hearing what you got to say. Love hearing what you got to say. But yeah, that's all the time we've got for this week, guys. Again, I really think there's two things that I've got here written down even from today that you take away. It's, first thing, humility precedes exaltation. I love that. But then also what AJ just said there at the end, be a lifelong learner. I think that just really, especially that last one, can really help us just grow into not only our calling in life, but just the full potential that we can have in life. So again, and that's what we're all about here on the Monday Motivation Podcast, is drawing closer to our full potential one Monday at a time. Again, AJ, thank you so much, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that was great. See you guys all next week. We've got another episode coming out. But that's it for this week. Just AJ Garcia again, Director of Social Media and part of the preaching rotation at Westside Community Church.